We're going to get started. Your next presentation is with Patrice Embry. I've been practicing. Patrice, aside from being a project management wizard, a remote work savant, she is also a huge fan of both Murder, She Wrote and Golden Girls. So, yes, agreed. So, without further ado, here's Patrice.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So we're going to talk about running your project like a project manager. I'm a project manager. We're going to go over our scope. So this is coming directly from the description that you guys saw on the website. We're going to talk about our scope and what's in scope and what's not in scope, because we're going to start thinking like a project manager from right now. And we only have about 45 minutes until snack time, and I'm not going to be responsible for making you be late for snack time. So we might shrink this scope or expand this scope as we go because of what time it is. Okay? So we're going to talk about how we handle complex projects. We're going to talk about scope creep, which we heard a lot about, and scopes, risk, client issues, which are always fun. And we're going to talk about actionable, helpful tools to get you to where you need to be. What's not in scope? We're not going to talk about project management tools, although that's a big thing for a lot of people, but I am available later. And we're not going to talk about agile versus waterfall. We're going to leave that for another time. Okay. So I'm showing you this order of operations right now so that you can plan when you want to pay attention and when you want to check your phone or your laptop, because like I know what it's like. We're going to talk about me and about you. We're going to talk about what project management is. We're going to talk about scopes and SOWs. We're going to talk about budgets and estimates, timelines, risk, when to pull the plug, and common issues, and then your questions. Okay? Who am I? I'm from Philadelphia, and that is our hockey team's new mascot. You might have seen on the news because it's insane. And the best thing I can say about Philadelphia is when this came out, Philly was like, what the hell is that? And then the mainstream media said, what the hell is that? And Philly said, that's our gritty. You stop talking about our gritty. So that's exactly what Philadelphia is all about. So I live just outside of the city. I've met a lot of people. I've seen a lot of stuff because I'm old, as you now know, because I watched Murder, She Wrote and Golden Girls. I really, really love project management. I'm a project manager, but I'm also a certified Scrum Master, or, that's a registered trademark. And I'm a freelancer. I provide freelance project management, process analysis, PM training, and consulting. Really quickly, this is how I got to where I am. I was born, I went to school. I learned what email was because I thought it was like kind of like faxing, where you had to keep your computer on to get email. So this was like in the early 90s. So once I realized what it was, I thought, oh, this is fun. I was working for a race car company at the time, which my brother-in-law owns. I taught myself HTML from a book. So it was just HTML. Like there wasn't like versions because it was just the one. So the website had a lot of like blinking things and like diamond plate backgrounds, because that was like, whoa, and things that moved. And I felt really happy with myself. So after that, I had many other jobs. We're gonna lump them all together. I've worked for agencies that have done pharmaceutical work, finance, nonprofits I'm doing now. Like I've done lots of stuff. So many, many jobs, which made me realize that I hate many, many jobs. And now I'm a freelancer. I threw all that away. I write about PM now, and here I am. I'm here. Okay, I want to know who you guys are, just so I can make sure I hit the right things. How many of you are freelancers? Yeah. Developers? Agency owners or managers? Yeah, there you go. And other project managers? Oh, That's right. So there really is something here for everyone, and we're going to cover everything. Everything, okay? Because I'm not going to assume everybody knows anything. So we're going to start from the top. So what is project management? It's not just something to hate and fear, because everyone hates and fears it, but it's the science of keeping projects on track. And if you don't work with a project manager, someone on your project team is a project manager and they don't know it. And it might be you. So these are why we're talking about this today. Core responsibilities, scope, what you sold to the client, budget, how much it costs, and time, how long it's going to take you to do the thing, okay? It's also called the iron triangle of project management. So scope, budget, and time, they're all related. If you move one, the others move. It's really ingrained in all of us project managers that these are the three most important things to talk about. So I asked a bunch of my PM friends about what problems they saw most of all in a lot of the projects that they do. And what they said was overselling and overpromising. We hate sales teams because they constantly are doing too much. Turning a blind eye to red flags, just kind of pretending some of those things don't exist. And never pulling the plug on a dead project. Just like, well, you know, we'll keep working on it. It'll be a showpiece, and it'll be a really great case study, and just like working through something that really needs to be stopped. And if you think about those things, it's budget, scope, and time. So it's all the things that we're supposed to be going over in the first place. So now we're going to get in the weeds. So we'll talk about scope first. All right, so scope is the thing that you sold and now you're contractually obligated to deliver. Okay, so a scope is a CMS-driven website, 3-page templates, blah, 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 blah. Lots and lots of stuff, very well explained. It could be a microsite with a landing page, and it's got a video, and it's got this, and it's got that. Very well explained. What's not a scope is a fully functioning website that's going to engage the mind and increase the sense. That's not a scope. That's a sales statement. That's not a scope. So we're very clear on that. And if you think that like, oh, that's funny, like that happens. That's a thing. Yeah, you know, that's a thing that happens. It's not a scope. Why is it crucial? Because you'll never know when you're done if you don't say what it is that you're doing. You'll never know when to charge for extra work. I mean, Luke was just talking about scope creep and how it can really mess things up. And your clients are just going to keep expecting more work. If you don't ever say the definition of you're done of this project, they're just going to be like, well, I figured that this was included, and they're just going to keep milking you for more stuff. So an SOW is a statement of work. I'm not going to go too far into it because a lot of you guys are agency folks and you probably already do these today. But I'm going to mention it only because I see some SOWs from clients, from agencies that bring me on as a freelancer. They'll say like, oh, we really need someone to come in and really like keep the team in check and make sure that we're not giving away too much work. 'Cause we're giving away a lot of work and we really shouldn't. It's the team's fault. And I say, okay, well, let me see your SOWs. And they show me the SOWs and I'm like, oh, that's why, because your SOW is not really an SOW. It's not about your company. It's not a proposal. It's a contract where you're explaining exactly what it is that you're going to give to someone. So you could add some of those other things in, but that's not what the SOW is. I see so much stuff that's like, here's what our company does, and here's how we can help you because we're so great. And here's the things that we're contractually obligating ourselves to give to you. It needs to be that, and then if you want to throw other stuff in, that's great. So how to create one, we won't spend a lot of time here, but you just start with what you know and you document it. You're going to get language from everywhere. If you've had email conversations, phone conversations, you've taken notes, you want to add all of that in there to make sure that you have everything documented. So you're going to go through an estimating exercise to make sure that you're covering everything, and then you're going to mitigate some risks right up front in your document. and then you're going to get your client to sign off on it. A lot of people are like, oh, here's a proposal, it was never signed. A proposal's not an SOW, and you have to have it signed. You have to have it signed. I can't stress it enough. That's a thing. People do that. That's a thing. All right, so let's get into budget. So before you can do anything with your budget, you have to have an estimate, and you have to estimate properly. Okay, you have to think through all the chunks of work that you need to do. Seems obvious, but let me tell you people, it's not. All the extra stuff, testing, rounds of revision. Oh yeah, rounds of revisions. Yeah, if they give us extra stuff to do, we're gonna have to do it. Yeah, think through all that. Do you have to buy any plugins? Do you have to pay for anything outside of what you already have in-house? Pad. Definitely. So yeah, the asshole charge. So many of you might already be familiar with this, but if this is a customer that you've already worked with before and they've been terrible and want 10,000 meetings and everything, just really sort of drain your resources, you can consider adding in some extra time. It is, it's a thing that I have found very helpful. Okay, so how to properly estimate. Oh, we already went through this, yeah. There we go. So we're gonna take all this time and add it up and multiply it by our hourly rate, that's time and materials, or you're gonna go through and figure everything out and it's a fixed bid. So figure out what you're gonna do, but the goal is to know exactly what it is that you're doing so that you have a proper estimate, and that goes into your SOW. Oh, yeah, and then add another 10% on top of all that. So we're gonna talk about estimate traps. Okay? Forgetting a feature. It actually does happen where people are like, oh my God, I forgot that it was supposed, we talked about that once and I forgot to write it down, or I wrote it down and I forgot to put it into the SOW. That's why you're padding, that's why you're adding, an extra 10%, you're writing everything down, absolutely. Thinking the client has something in place that they don't. This happens all the time where you're like, oh wait, so you don't have hosting already? You don't already have this library, you're not already equipped with all your PDFs. So you have to make sure that you know that they have something in place, assuming that something will work. So I was working on a project just recently where someone was like, but I thought this was gonna work because I used it somewhere else and it did. But you have to make sure, I said to him, was every single thing exactly the same? No, okay, well then you can't assume that something's gonna work. You have to really sort of make sure that you have thought that through. Not including meeting and admin time. This is a huge one, because if you figure that you've got one status meeting every week with 10 people in it over the course of 6 weeks, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time, and if you haven't set a line item for that, you're really gonna screw yourself with how much time you have to do work. So that's a big one. And then not thinking about things at a high enough level. The same guy who I was just talking about also had this other problem. I don't work with him anymore. Also had this other problem where he was fixing a problem that was happening right here and not realizing that it had to actually work with everything else. We had to back out all of his work pro bono and then do all that work over again. It was horrifying. So you have to think of things at a high enough level to understand that you're not fixing the problem that you have right in front of you, but you might be fixing something that's a little bit more overarching. Okay, here's the trick for estimates. I have a spreadsheet, I use it for all of my projects. It lists out across the top every single role, every role that's going to be involved, even in a small little way with the project, including consultants. And down the columns, or down the rows, we have every single thing. And this is even high level because it's fake, but when I do one of these for real, it has everything. So I'm using everything that I know is going to be in the SOW, everything that was in the proposal, and I'm lying. And it takes a little while to do this, but it's worth it. So I'm making sure that I have each piece of everything. I add the padding at the bottom. Admin is a line item, so I figure out how much time everyone's going to need for admin. This is how I add it up. if you look at it and you're like, holy shit, that's like way too much, that's not in line with market value, then you either have to decide that you want to do it anyway, or you're gonna have to say like, all right, I've been undervaluing my projects thus far, this is how much it costs. Because this is how much it costs. This is not like what it could, this is what it's gonna be. So this is your decision time about what you're gonna do.
Is this spreadsheet, is your template available somewhere?
It could be, yeah. I'm gonna make this whole thing available, and I'll do like a redacted one and find one and try to upload it for you guys. Yeah, it is fantastic. Okay, so now that you've got an estimate, you can figure out your budget. So, you know, you can figure out how to make a budget. But the most important thing on this slide is that you have to keep track of it at least once a week, you know. A lot of people are like, we have a budget, and then they never actually see if they're keeping up with the budget. You have to do that, or else you're never gonna know if you're running out of money. So common budget traps, okay. Hidden features. Oh, like we thought that it was gonna do this. We had assumed that you knew what we wanted it to do. So you gotta be careful that you don't have features that you forgot to add. Hosting, licenses, all the different things that come with, you know, building something, think it all through. Make sure it's in the budget, not just in the scope, but in the budget. Travel. If you need to have people on site for some reason, you know, you got to make sure that that's in the budget, not just the actual travel expenses, but the time it takes those people that you have to pay to get to where they're going. And additional stakeholders. Every time you add an additional stakeholder, figure you're adding 10% more to your budget. Because the more people who are looking at stuff, the more people who are going to be giving their 2 cents, and they're going to get you off track. So if there's additional stakeholders and reviews, you want to try to, if you feel like that could be a thing that happens, you want to think about it ahead of time and put it in your budget. Worst that'll happen is it doesn't happen and you've got some money, so that's good. These are the budget tricks that I've been able to figure out. Like, money is money. Like, you can't do anything about it. Things cost what they cost. There's really not a great way to like get around what a budget is. So maybe having a slush fund, no, that could work. But there aren't a lot of tricks, so you gotta get it right. Okay, moving on to timeline. Okay, so this is the amount of time that you need to complete the project. So many times people are like, this is how long it takes to get to the launch. It actually goes through the launch to the post-launch, because you know that if someone says, yesterday you launched and the thing doesn't work, I need you to fix it, and your resources are now on a different project, like, it's not done. Now it's not done. So you need to make sure that you keep that in mind as you're making your timeline. Then you can either work forwards and say, like, this is how long it's gonna take. That almost never happens, because there's usually something that people have to have done by a certain time. So you usually are working backwards, and you're like, okay, so are you gonna be able to do this in 2 weeks, and all of your developers are gonna hate you? Because it happens. So traps for timelines. Holidays and vacations. I can't tell you myself, I have done this more than once, figured that something was gonna happen on a time when I was on vacation. Not just the people I work with, but like I was on vacation. So making sure you take that into account on your side and on their side, because you don't want something to be like, this has to have your sign off by this date. I'm gonna be in Aruba. Well, you know, you've just kind of screwed yourself, so. Client-side retreats or events when everybody in the company is not gonna be around. You have to make sure you plot that on a timeline so that if something shifts here or there, you're like, oh, we either have to do it now or we have to do it in a week because they're all gone during this week. Weekends. There have been people that I've worked with that are like, well, we'll just be able to use the weekends, or not realize that they're like, but it's 10 days, but okay, it's actually 6 days when you think about a long weekend or a weekend or whatever. So you have to keep that in mind as well. forgetting about QA and bug fixing and launch and post-launch. So people tend to think about things from when it's done, like dev complete. Dev complete is a great milestone, but it's only a milestone, it's not the end. You have your QA time that people forget about, and you have your bug fixing time that people forget about, UAT, and your post-launch. So make sure that these are part of your timeline. So we've talked about scope creep, but let's talk about hope creep, because I even do this. Yeah. This is like, okay, how long will it take you to do this thing? I could probably do it in this amount of time. Like, most often, you know, you have to be really realistic. And if you are working with someone who's not realistic, you have to be realistic for them and be like, I know you said 2 weeks. You habitually underestimate the amount of time that it takes you to do this stuff, so I'm gonna make it 3 weeks. So that's hope creep. Context switching. This is a big thing for myself and a lot of other people. So I have ADD. So for me, it's really hard to do context switching, and I know it's hard for a lot of other people as well. So keep that in mind. You can't necessarily, if you're running more than one project at a time and you're like, oh, well, there's 8 hours in a day and I have a developer and he can work on 4 different projects in the day, you have to take into account the amount of time that it's gonna take anyone that you're loading up on stuff to stop what they're doing on here and start what they're doing on here. So if you've got people like, you know, running up way too many hours in a day where they have literally no time to sort of think or stop, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. And never updating the timeline. People do this, so they make a timeline at the beginning of the project, and then they're like, here's our timeline, and then something gets delayed, and they're like, here's our timeline. So at some point, you have to look at that and be like, okay, I've moved this forward a day, now I have to figure out what I'm gonna do about that because I still need to make this milestone at this time. So make sure you're updating it so that doesn't creep up on you. So if you have a timeline and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna make this work, think about working on things concurrently, but not so concurrent that you can't get the things done that you need to, or think about the things in the way you need to. Can you move forward on this thing while this other thing is happening? Can you move forward at risk while someone's reviewing something and be like, okay, well, the designs aren't set, but we can start development on these things that are not dependent on the design being set. So you can do that. And then deliver in phases, or use MVP, which is the minimum viable product. So you can either say, you know, look, I know that you want this huge thing, we sold you this huge thing, but you've got this like time when you need this done, and I want you to have something for that event, let's say. So we're gonna do this in phases, and phase 1 is gonna be like the MVP thing. We're gonna get this online for you, you're gonna be able to show it, and everyone's gonna love it, and then we're gonna deliver these other features for you right after that. So you can try to work that in. Okay. Managing risks. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, people. Managing risks. So I say this for literally everything. So if I think I was sitting at lunch and people were asking me, like, I was like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, my dress could fall off and I'd be standing here in my tights. But ask, what's the worst thing that can happen for everything? As a project manager, you literally have to think of what could go wrong for everything. So find that out. Like, it's a painful exercise, but you'll thank yourself for it. Look at things that went poorly before and don't do those things again. So if you're doing project retrospectives, this is gonna be a lot easier because you're gonna like actually analyze how a project went and know what those things are. But if you don't do those, just think about projects that have been similar and make sure that you don't do some of the things, any of the traps that you fell into before, don't fall into them again. So take whatever you find, the risks that you find, and figure out, okay, if this happens, what am I gonna do? Or how can I make this thing not happen? So these things went poorly before, how can I make it not happen again? So you're gonna make them into assumptions that you're gonna put in your SOW. And if you've already, like, that ship has sailed, You can still sort of set those expectations in like an email or like at the beginning of a meeting or something. It's just a little bit harder to enforce, but you're gonna need to put those somewhere so that you're like covered. And we'll go over those in a little bit, some assumptions. Okay, scope creep. So we've talked about scope creep already. Luke talked about scope creep. I'm just gonna give you some examples. We just have 2 more edits and then we're gonna approve it. This is on like round 3. Like, that's scope creep. Our writer, this happened to me. The writer delivered the copy and there's more than we figured. So I was like, okay, so how much more can more be? Like pages more. Like all the spots that we thought the copy was gonna fit into, like it was blown. It was completely blown. Scope creep. I just don't feel like this is quite there yet. Like, I hear that often when their stakeholder is like at an executive level, they'll be like, I just feel like it's not quite there. That's scope creep. That's an extra round of revision, probably more than one. Maybe it would be better if we did this other thing instead. That's scope creep. What we hadn't considered was that scope creep. Our CEO wants to see it. Red flag. That's almost always going to be scope creep. This happened to me too. Oh, this is great. Our branding is going to be changing in January, and you're like, oh my God, like everything is predicated on the branding that you have right now. So that's scope creep. It has to work with our PayPal account. The what? It has to what? What has to work with your PayPal? So things like that, that's scope creep. We just found out anything that happens after we just found out is scope creep. And it happens. Okay, so how do you handle it when it happens? You can say no. No. Everybody thinks that that's the project manager way, is to always say no. They're like, but you guys always say no. Well, sometimes you have to say no. But if you don't want to say no, yes, but yes, we can do that, but it's going to cost you more. Yes, we can do that, but our timeline is going to have to change. Yes, we can do that, but you're going to have to take away something else. So yes, but. And if the answer is yes, change order. So if you went through the exercise of an SOW, but you don't go through an exercise of a change order when scope changes, you might as well have not had that SOW to begin with. You have to document what the changes are in the same way that you documented the initial SOW. Assumptions, what it covers, what it doesn't cover, how much it's going to cost. You need to have a change order. Okay, so here's some assumptions. Rounds of revisions. This includes 2 rounds of revisions per milestone. This includes 3 rounds of revisions about this specific design. Lay it all out. And additional review rounds will incur an additional charge. The client is responsible for X, whatever it is. Finding the pictures, writing the copy, you're responsible for this. It may seem obvious, nothing's ever obvious, so list it out. This will happen if you don't. So if you don't give us the text, we're going to do lorem ipsum. If you don't give us the images, we're going to put pictures of cats. So whatever it is, that's what's going to happen if you don't give it to me. And then, oh yeah. This has happened to me so many times if you don't specify how you want those things from your client, you can really, like, what is this? Why? Like, I think these are like drawings that you're faxing to me. Like, that's not how I want your images. They have to be in this format. And then list out anything that's not included. So at the beginning of this talk, I talked about what's not in scope, right? So whatever's not included, list it out. And you might feel weird about that because it feels like you're pointing out the shortcomings of the thing that you sold, but trust me when I say that it's better to have it in there and take whatever that risk is you think and do this instead. And then you're going to state that a change order will be issued in your SOW. You're going to say, if any of this changes, we will issue a change order. That's right there. So if anyone gives you flack about it later on, you can be like, we said, and it's in here and you signed it. Okay, and I'm going to make this all available to you guys after this, so it's a lot of stuff on one page, but you'll see it later. Now here's a fun thing that's coming up next that I love, and I've only been able to implement it once. The pause clause. It's fantastic, and you have to really take a chance to use it, but it's a great tool. And this is from a company called EngineWorks, who is now the Bureau of Digital. If you haven't heard of that, you should totally look it up. If a deliverable is late, we put you on pause. And we're not sure when we're gonna unpause you, and because we might have moved on and our resources won't be there. It seems really like aggressive, but if you explain it to a client and say like, look, I mean, here's what would happen, we wouldn't be able to do this. They're like, okay, I get it, you know. Then you say to them, well, are you planning to be more than 10 days late? No, I'm not planning to be more than 10 days late. Well, then this shouldn't be a big deal. It's fantastic if you can use it. Okay. When to pull the plug. Pulling the plug on a project is fairly easy if you can't get a change order and you know that there's more stuff to be done. If there's no way to recoup your losses, there's like literally nothing you could do because you're so far in the hole that a change order would look ludicrous, and there's no way to satisfy the client. So if you've gone back to the client with pro bono like stuff that you've done because you're really trying to satisfy them and you just know that they're not going to be satisfied until you are super far in the hole, pull the plug. If there's no way to keep the project team from imploding, yes.
Are these ands or ors? Is it an and or an or list?
Oh, it's or.
Okay.
Oh yeah, if any one of these things is true, you can pull the plug on the project. I give you permission. I validate you, pull the plug. Okay, pulling the plug on a client. Now this is hard because these are people that pay you. When I became a freelancer, I realized that this is like hard. I was like, oh, just fire the client. When I worked at an agency, just fire the client. And now I'm like, oh my God, I can't fire a client. If they don't respect the contract, fire them. If they don't respect you, fire them. If they pause too long, and even if you don't have the pause clause, if they pause too long, at some point you're gonna be like, look, we're gonna give you what we have now, we can't sustain this. If they don't make you more money than you're expending trying to do this client, like whatever it is. So I tell people that if they can't put all of their hours that they use on a client into a billable line item, keep it aside. You need to know how much time you're really spending on a client so you can figure this out. Because if you don't like count the 2-hour, talk them down from a ledge conversation you've had like every week for the past 3 weeks, you're not going to realize that they're costing you more than they're making you. You have to keep track of all of that. Okay, pulling the plug on an agency. These are for people who work for agencies. This is why I pulled the plug on all of the agencies and work for myself. If they don't estimate realistically, quit. Because you're just gonna be, especially as a project manager, you're gonna be the one that's constantly gonna be trying to fit something in that's never gonna work. If they don't protect their employees, get out. If they throw you to the wolves when they're on a client call and they don't protect you, quit. If they don't absorb and deflect client anger, like on a call or in a meeting or in an email, they don't have your best interest at heart, pull the plug. Okay. Whew, that was a lot of stuff. Okay, where are we? I don't want to step on any toes here. So I'm going to go through a couple of these common issues. And like I said, I'm going to make this available to you later on.
I think you've got plenty of time. You've still got like 20 minutes.
I do?
No.
No, it's at 2:45. Snack, 2:45. Phew. Don't eat, don't play, I know. Okay, so if you say but no one's getting any of their approvals to me on time, you can say, and this is a good one, we'll assume that if you don't get back to us by this time, then it's approved. Oh, it's so easy, and people are like, oh, I never thought that I could do that. Yes, you could totally do that. If it's something that's really, really big, You're gonna wanna be careful with this, but like for most things, like a second round design sign off, if I don't hear from you by Tuesday, we'll assume it's done. People saying they didn't know they had to do something. I wasn't sure that I was supposed to do that. I didn't know that I was supposed to be the one to do that. Like, document everything and reference it and say, you were supposed to do it and you were supposed to do it by this date. So document everything. My friend, so I was telling my friend that I was doing this talk, and I was like, she's like, I don't know anything about project management. And I said, well, do you ever feel like uncomfortable talking to a client about stuff? And she's like, yeah. Well, what do you feel uncomfortable? I feel uncomfortable giving deadlines on things, especially when I don't know how long they actually take. So I'm the type of project manager who, even though I taught myself HTML back in the mid-90s, I don't know how to code now. So I wouldn't be able to look at something and be like, oh, I know how long this thing will take. And that's okay. Like, I assured her that she doesn't need to know all the technical ins and outs to be able to give someone a deadline. So you can say, I'm hoping that you can get this to me by this date and this time, but if that's not reasonable, just tell me what is. So if I say to you, like, I was hoping that you could get this entire website to me by next Tuesday, is that reasonable? No, that's not reasonable. That's fine. Okay, so tell me, I will give it to you in 3 months. Okay, now I have a better idea of how long something's gonna take, so you can do that. And once they tell you what a reasonable amount of time is, you can hold them to it. You said it was gonna be 3 months, so there you go. People on my team dislike each other. So the project manager is almost always in charge of keeping everyone civil on the team. It's kind of a hidden part of the job and kind of a shitty part of the job, but it's part of the job. So if people are infighting and nipping at each other, like, you just need to call it out. So but be really matter of fact about it. Like, okay, you guys seem to have a difference of opinion and it's really starting to impact this work. There's no emotion there, there's no judgment. This thing is happening and it's making this thing happen. So you can say, when you do that, it costs us 15 minutes of our meeting time every single time and we can't afford that. Who's gonna say like, no, you're wrong. I wanna be able to argue. Like, it's gonna be fine. I have to tell the client no. I think one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do is fly from Philadelphia to Portland, Oregon, to the offices of a company by myself as the only representative of the company that I was working for, to across the country, time zones, literally for one meeting where I had to tell them we weren't gonna meet their date. It sucks so bad, but everything else in comparison seems super easy, so that's very helpful. So consider options and consequences. So if you're gonna say no, you can say, no, I can't do this, or we're not gonna make this date, or we're not gonna do this, or we're not gonna be able to make this work the way we thought, but we can do this and this instead, or you can try doing this and this instead. Yeah, so give them the option and the consequence for each thing that you wanna do, and usually people will be like, okay, they'll gloss over the fact that the thing is no, hopefully, or they'll bring it up later, and they'll just focus on the solution. Having to give bad news to anyone, again, just matter of fact, no emotion, bad news with solutions, it's kind of the same thing. We keep making the same mistakes over and over. All right, so you need to have postmortems, and everyone wants to call them retrospectives because, like, postmortem sounds like, it's postmortem. It's like you're dissecting a project to figure out why it went the way it did. So we're just gonna call them that. Make some custom checklists after you do those postmortems so that when you're sitting down to do the next project, you're like, oh, I need to make sure that I don't do these 5 things that, were a problem last time. There's no way we can do all this work in this time. Working currently, working at risk, MVP, we've already talked about that. If none of that stuff works, you get everyone together and work out the problem. It's not just the project manager's responsibility. We take it on, it's part of our job description, but at the end of the day, it's a team effort and someone besides you can help you figure out how to fix it. We did it, okay. Woo! All right. 3 minutes, okay. Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
Statement of works.
Yes.
Especially for sites and everything, how detailed are those? I've seen it from, okay, we're going to have e-commerce with a shopping cart and the user can create an account, to we're going to have a shopping cart with these 5 fields, to like exactly what options of fields are going to include. So I've seen statements of work that are like 4 pages or 25 pages. I mean, like how detailed do you suggest that we get on the building?
If you know the details ahead of time, you already know how you're going to do something and you're really, really set on how it's going to work. You've talked it through. Maybe you had a discovery process that you sold in at the beginning, which I'm a big, big fan of. Like if you don't know what you're going to do, say like, let's take $5,000 and figure out how we're going to do it. And then we'll have like a more detailed thing and we'll know what to do. So if you have the information, make it detailed because it is a contract and that's what you want to, make sure that you're covering. If you don't know everything that you're doing, then you just want your estimate to reflect that so that you have the time to think through things and maybe even go a little bit down a different path before you switch gears. But I don't think there's any like one length of SOW or what it should cover. And it also depends on who the client is and if you have done work for them before, you might not need to be as detailed. So it depends. It's not the suckiest answer. It depends. Yes.
Do you have a suggestion on how to address if a client goes back to their sales rep? So
Oh, I know what you mean. Okay.
I said no, but here's a change order. This is how much the
Doesn't that suck?
And then they go back to the sales rep.
And they're like, I thought you said, and then the sales guy comes to you and I'm gonna need you to go ahead and, yes, I know exactly what you mean. Quit. No, just kidding. I mean, that's what I did in that situation. Actually, they fired that guy, so that was good. I mean, really the only thing you can do is then push back on the sales guy and say look, we can't do that, and I need you to go tell him now. You've now made a situation that you're going to need to get us out of, sales guy. So that's my advice there. See if that works. Yes.
Do you ever guarantee the up to the point of QA and then or quality assurance period, and then force the client to assume the responsibility of launch based on how long they take to QA? Like I've tried this a couple of times and it's worked, and I'm wondering if that's, it doesn't always work.
So tell me again. So you're gonna so your SOW covers through end of UAT.
Yeah, I've got you a fully developed site. I'll get it to you by this date, and then the launch date is based on you and the amount of time it takes you to finish your content, do the training, and I usually say it takes you about 3 weeks generally, and then they can take 2 months, and it doesn't affect my my scope.
Just gonna write that down right now as a thing to do. Yeah, no, that sounds great.
It doesn't help you with the amount of hours that you're gonna have. Suddenly you don't know the 40 hours you have left for QA can be spread out over 2 months rather than 3 weeks. So it makes it less. You have to be more flexible in that way.
Yeah.
For your resources, but you can then not be responsible for, I'm going to have it launched on this date, because if they don't care about that date, you're causing undue stress to your developers.
Oh yeah, totally. It's a great idea. I'm trying to think of, I feel like 90% of the projects that I've worked on have a deadline for a certain thing. I think if it didn't and there were flexibility, that's a great idea, and I'm going to steal it. I'm just going to tell you right now. It'll be in my next presentation. You can't be there.
But the client still won't get their problem out of there.
Oh yeah, clients suck. I know.
If you have no authority to make the client do something, I love the idea, because you can't have responsibility even if they do have a hard launch date if they're not going to hurry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that you have to remember, and it's hard, and it takes a while, and it's something that I've only maybe in the last 5 years or so really felt like I knew how to do, was not let the client have all the power. So the pause clause, 10 years ago, I would have been like, there's no way you could ever do that. Who does? No one could do that. But now I'm like, you can totally do that, because these are the types of people that you're going to want to work with anyway. So that definitely helps with something like that. Yes. Oh, you have it? Oh, see, go to, he's living proof right there. Do you have it too?
We take a charge. We charge $100 a fee. We don't guarantee resources past the
That's
We say,
perfect.
Project is this, we guarantee resources for that. If you come out of this period, then we have to restaff and re-resource, and we'll see.
We have
Wow.
a 2% fee, so like if it's a really big site.
I'm so happy to hear that that's like a thing that's really happening out in the world. Because a lot of times when I talk about it, people are like, you're nuts. So, excellent. Yes.
First off, brilliant talk. Like the whole time I'm like nodding and I'm like,
I know. It's like, I was
yeah, like the whole creep I'm definitely guilty of. So it's
super.
like really good stuff. Project management is something I need to work on. But I'm curious on the padding, because you're totally right. Like you should pad things because sometimes you don't know how much it is, how long things. Are there any specific places that you typically like to pad on? Like you notice that, hey, we should add more here. This is like a 5% padding here, or 10% on this particular thing. Or is it more like a blanket, like we're gonna just blanket the entire project?
For estimating,
Yeah, just like padding time,
development.
development.
I mean, hands down, development is the place. Like wherever we are in development, it's almost always more than, I mean, because I'm not a developer, so I can say this. Developers, like, they really believe in themselves, which is great. But then sometimes things happen and like it doesn't happen. So I feel like that's the place where it happens the most for estimating. Padding and timelines is usually in the discovery phase because all those people take way too long to do what they think they're going to do. So.
Is there like a set percentage or like general percentage or number that you add in? Like imagine you start working with a new agency, you've never worked with them, and you're like, okay, they gave me their estimates, but I need to pad this thing. Like, is there a certain number you're like, okay, I'm going to add this on?
It's usually around like 10%. Or it could be different based on the role, which is why I really like that spreadsheet because it allows me to do padding in different ways. So like I'm not gonna, I'm usually pretty on point with what I'm gonna do, but like a lead developer might be pretty on point, but like a junior developer, I might pad that. So yeah.
What's your,
I got something to actually contribute to that. So it's been a while since I've done client work and done scopes, but something we used to do was we had a Excel spreadsheet that does we had t-shirt sizing for features. Small, medium,
Oh yeah, I
large.
love t-shirt sizing. Yeah, it's
And
super.
So the larger the estimate, so if you think it's going to take 100 or 200 hours, that usually shows a sign of unsureness or something you might not know of the project. And then we use a standard deviation to actually calculate what your padding should be. So the larger the t-shirt size, the larger the padding is going to be.
That's excellent. I will also steal that. Yes.
what's your asshole charge? Like what?
Depends on the asshole.
I've done 25% when
Yeah.
it's just like I don't want to work with you, and I'm gonna make it really worth our
Yeah, I mean, so like if it's rounds of revisions because they're an asshole because they never can make up their minds, like that will be something that I'll feel like, okay, I'm saying 2 rounds, but I really mean 4 rounds. That's part of the asshole charge, and I think of that up front. But if it's like they ask for too many meetings, which is like what I find as asshole move, I will, like in that admin area, that's where I'll increase the number because I know I'm gonna have to talk to them like once a week because they've lost their mind on something and it's gonna take an hour of my time. So, it kind of depends. But if the whole company is an asshole, then it's like, all right, well, I might even wanna price myself out of this project altogether.
It works for line items too. Like as a freelancer, my rate sheet is actually really standard. Like I have one rate for everything except conference calls. If you make me out to young conference call, that is literally double my normal rate.
That's excellent. That's a great idea. Yeah, for sure.
So it works on particular budget items too, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm sure that could generalize to whole.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else? Yes.
I don't know if stakeholder creep was in your terms, but I feel like it has projects where the team we sell to is not the team we get in the project. So it's like, all these people we like aren't here, or they're being overseen by people that are new. How do you actually enforce, any kind of change order based on just them changing personnel?
I just make sure that everybody is clear on what the SOW was in the first place. When you do a kickoff, like if I know that the team is different, I might do a second kickoff call I'll do a kickoff call at the beginning of a project, but like let's say it's the beginning of development and now it's a whole new crew of people, I'll do another kickoff call. And I might not call it a kickoff call, but I'll go over some of those things so that I'm level setting right at the beginning. And if anyone does have a problem with that, I'm going to find out right then, and then kind of deal with it as it comes.
Our team has a clause in our contract that if you change the point of contact, the project stops.
What?
We have to restart it. So like if there has to be a new meeting, we have to start everything over, make sure everything gets caught up.
Oh my
That
God,
just
that would
protects us.
Right? I kind of am rethinking this whole employment thing.
We list the stakeholders on both sides.
Nice. Yeah. Super. Nice. Good stuff. Anything else? It's like over snack time. So thank you so much. Thank you.